Imagine waking up just completely disoriented in an intensive care unit.
Oh, man. Yeah, that is terrifying.
Right. You have absolutely no idea what day it is. You don't even know what continent you're on.
Wow.
And you try to move your arms, but they're physically bound to the sides of the bed with these heavy 6-inch tethers
Oh, my gosh.
because you've been fighting violently in your sleep, like trying to rip out your IV lines.
Yeah.
And the doctors and nurses rushing around your bed are shouting, but they're speaking a language you don't even understand.
Wait, what language was it?
It turns out to be Russian. You're in Moscow.
I mean, it sounds like the opening sequence of a Bourne movie or something.
Totally does.
But that is the stark, chaotic, and very real waking nightmare experienced by the author, Dr. Jordan B. Peterson, right in the middle of writing the book we are exploring today.
Exactly. So welcome to today's deep dive. We're looking at a stack of excerpts from the book Beyond Order, 12 More Rules for Life.
Yes, we are.
And our mission today is to explore the delicate, terrifying, and just absolutely necessary dance between order and chaos.
It's a heavy topic, for sure.
It really is. But what makes this deep dive so incredibly rare is the context of its creation. I mean, it's not every day that a philosophy aimed at personal development is immediately, brutally stress-tested by a life-or-death crisis of the author's own.
Right, you're usually reading theory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But here, we're looking at a survival guide written by someone who was, frankly, actively drowning.
And that context just changes how we read the text entirely. But to ground our discussion, it's really important to state our goal here.
Yeah.
We are not evaluating the author as some, infallible guru. Our focus is strictly on analyzing how these 12 specific rules function as practical tools for psychological survival.
Like, do they actually work in the real world?
Exactly. What do you do when the bottom absolutely falls out of your world? Do these principles actually hold structural weight when you are crushed by suffering, or do they just collapse?
Okay, let's unpack this, because what he went through is the literal clinical definition of chaos.
Oh, without a doubt.
This wasn't just like a tough month at work. It was a cascading avalanche of severe medical tragedies that hit his family all at once.
Yeah, it was just one thing after another.
First, in early 2019, his daughter, Michaela, had to go to Switzerland to get an artificial ankle replacement completely reconstructed.
Which is a massive surgery on its own.
Right. And then while dealing with that, his wife, Tammy, was diagnosed with an extremely rare aggressive kidney cancer.
And the statistics on her specific malignancy were just grim. I mean, the fatality rate was close to 100% within a year.
God, that's just unimaginable.
It is. And the surgeries required to remove the kidney and the affected lymphatic system triggered this massive life-threatening complication.
Yeah, didn't she develop something called Chilas cysts?
Yes, exactly. Essentially, her lymphatic system was leaking up to a gallon of vital fluid a day into her abdominal cavity.
A gallon a day. Wow.
Yeah, it drains the body's essential immune fluids and proteins, basically starving the system from the inside out.
Which, incredibly, was finally stopped by this miraculous, highly specialized procedure in Philadelphia involving, of all things, poppy seed oil dye.
Yeah, modern medicine is wild.
Right. And that successful surgery happened exactly on their 30th wedding anniversary.
Unbelievable timing.
But, while his family was fighting for their physical lives, his own neurological and physical health just completely collapsed.
Yeah, the stress must have been immense.
It was. A severe autoimmune reaction to food caused his blood pressure to drop so low he would gray out and nearly faint just trying to stand up.
Oh, wow.
And to handle the resulting physical anxiety and insomnia, he was prescribed what seemed like a standard benzodiazepine.
But that prescription became the trapdoor to his descent.
Yeah, it really did.
He developed what is known as a severe paradoxical reaction. Normally, a benzodiazepine calms the nervous system.
Right, that's what it's supposed to do.
But in a paradoxical reaction, the brain's receptors misfire. The drug meant to calm you throws gasoline on the panic fire.
That sounds horrific.
It gets worse. When the doctors raised his dose to help him cope with his wife's terminal cancer diagnosis, his anxiety skyrocketed into this unbearable physical dread.
He even tried ketamine treatments to break the resulting depression, right?
He did.
Which he described as producing nothing but 2 horrific 90-minute trips to hell.
Ugh, just awful.
And when he tried to taper off the benzodiazepines, he developed akathisia.
And we should clarify, this isn't just feeling a bit fidgety.
No, not at all. Akathisia is this uncontrollable, agonizing restlessness. It's a neurological torture where jumping out of your own skin feels like the only option.
It's pure agony.
He spent months traveling the world looking for a clinic that could handle this complex withdrawal, eventually ending up with double pneumonia, and was placed in a medically induced coma in that Russian ICU just to bypass the acute neurological shock of the withdrawal.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we really have to ask how the human mind survives that level of compounded, relentless tragedy.
Yeah, I mean, how do you not just give up?
Well, the text notes two lifelines. The first, unsurprisingly, was the profound, stabilizing love of his family.
Naturally, yeah.
But the second lifeline is where the psychology gets crucial for our analysis. He forced himself to sit at his computer and continue the meaningful work of writing this book.
Even in the middle of all that.
Yes. He did this even on days when he genuinely believed he was going to die in one of those hospital wards.
Wow. I want to use an analogy here because reading that part of the text really stopped me in my tracks.
Okay, go for it.
I keep picturing his meaningful work like a heavy anchor in a hurricane. But here is the part I find counterintuitive.
What's that?
Why does having a heavy, burden-like writing, a complex, philosophically demanding book, actually keep you from being blown away by suffering? Shouldn't adding a massive weight to a drowning man just drag him under faster?
It seems like it would, for sure. But we have to differentiate between happiness and meaning.
Okay, how so?
Happiness is like a sunny day. It's wonderful, but it is entirely dependent on circumstances going well, and it's completely outside of your control. When the hurricane hits, happiness vanishes.
That makes sense.
Meaning, however, is the house you build to withstand the storm. It doesn't make the storm go away, but it gives you a place to stand.
Oh, I like that.
Psychologically speaking, meaning organizes your nervous system by adopting the maximum degree of responsibility. By choosing to build something of value despite the surrounding chaos, you align your complex internal state.
So you're basically proving to yourself that you haven't given up.
Exactly. You are acting out the core belief that the world is still worth saving. That purposeful alignment provides the actual neurological strength to endure the absurdity of the suffering.
So having a deeply rooted why provides the structural integrity to survive the how.
Perfectly said.
And having seen the author literally swallowed by chaos, let's step back and look at the fundamental framework of the philosophy he was trying to articulate. The book is titled Beyond Order. Why focus on what is beyond it?
Because to survive reality, you have to understand the fundamental mechanics of how reality presents itself to us. The author divides human experience into two primary domains.
Order and chaos.
Yes. So, the first is order. Order is explored territory. It is the predictable environment where our actions produce the exact results we expect.
So if you're listening to this on your commute, the route you take every single day where you know exactly which lane to be in and how long it takes, that is your order.
Exactly.
It's comfortable. It requires very little cognitive load.
Precisely. But order has a dangerous shadow side.
Oh.
Yeah. When we try to eradicate all unknowns, when we refuse to update our maps, order rigidifies. It becomes totalitarianism on a macro level, or willful, stubborn blindness on a personal level.
Just sticking your head in the sand.
Right. Our knowledge of the world is always incomplete, and the world itself is always shifting. If we cling desperately only to what we already know, we stagnate and eventually crumble when the environment changes.
And the opposite of order is chaos, the unexplored domain. It's anomaly, novelty, unpredictability.
Yes, the great unknown.
Taking the commute analogy, chaos is the sudden multi-car pileup that forces you onto back roads you've never seen, making you late for a critical meeting. Or, it's the illness that comes out of nowhere or the sudden job loss.
It's all of those terrifying things, but crucially, it's also the only place where new potential exists. Chaos is the source of all new information.
You can't just avoid it entirely.
No, you can't. The philosophy argues that a successful, resilient life requires maintaining a careful, dynamic border between the two. We must keep one foot planted firmly in the security of order so we don't go mad, while stretching the other foot tentatively into the beyond so we can continue to grow.
Wait, if chaos is this terrifying dragon that almost killed his family, why would we ever voluntarily step into it? Shouldn't the goal of personal development be to build stronger walls?
It is a totally natural human instinct to want thicker walls. But total order means total sterility. Nothing new can grow in a completely locked down, hermetically sealed environment.
Okay, I see your point.
Furthermore, When you hide behind walls, the chaotic forces outside don't magically disappear. They actually grow larger in the darkness of your
Because
ignorance.
you're just ignoring them while they fester.
Exactly. When your rigid, fragile order is eventually, inevitably breached by a crisis, those chaotic forces will appear absolutely monstrous and insurmountable.
That makes total sense.
But, and this is the hinge of the entire philosophy, if you approach the unknown voluntarily with careful preparation and discipline, you capture the potential within it before it grows into a monster.
The sources illustrate this using an incredible mythological archetype, right? A dragon of chaos perched on top of a sphere called the round chaos.
Yes, it's an ancient neurological operating system represented through myth. Think of the round chaos as a locked treasure chest of raw, unformed data.
Like new skills, new truths, new ways of living.
Exactly. The dragon represents the very real fear and difficulty you have to fight to unlock that chest. Our ancestors literally faced predators' chaos to gain territory and resources, which is order.
So it's baked into our biology.
Completely. By voluntarily confronting the dragon, you slay it, and it releases the information you desperately need to update your map and build a better world. Approaching the unknown on your own terms transforms terrifying chaos into habitable, productive order.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the text moves us from this grand mythological battle of dragons and ancient chaos right into the most mundane, practical arena imaginable,
The modern corporate office.
the modern corporate office. The juxtaposition is jarring but necessary.
Because when order becomes absurd or completely rigid in our daily lives, it manifests as ideology. And navigating a corrupt or absurd ideology at work becomes a massive daily test of personal development and integrity.
The text highlights Rule V, do not do what you hate, and Rule 6, abandon ideology, by sharing a story of a corporate client.
Right, the HR meetings.
Yeah, she was trapped in these endless, soul-crushing HR meetings. And the burning topic of these mandatory meetings, whether or not the term flip chart, the large pad of paper on a tripod used in brainstorming, was actually a highly derogatory and offensive term.
It's a perfect example of rigid order detaching from reality, and it's worth noting how the author approaches this clinically.
Yeah, and just to pause here, we should be explicitly clear to you listening. We are impartially reporting the author's experiences and examples here, without taking any political sides regarding corporate diversity or ideology.
Absolutely. We're just exploring the framework. He doesn't turn this into a predictable political shouting match. He completely bypasses the politics of the debate itself to focus entirely on the psychological damage happening to the employee sitting in that chair.
Right, so she was an immigrant from a former Soviet bloc country, so she had a highly tuned radar for authoritarian ideology. She recognized the structure of it immediately.
You'd seen it before.
Exactly. She told the author that participating in these absurd, mandated debates made a complete mockery of her actual productive work.
Participating in something you know to be absurd causes a deep, fracturing self-betrayal. When you are forced to say words you don't believe or do things you find deeply hateful and stupid, your brain experiences severe cognitive dissonance.
It just tears you apart.
It destroys your sense of self-trust. The author warns that giving in to this turns you into a marionette.
That is such a visceral metaphor. If you're a marionette, who exactly is pulling the strings?
That is the danger. When you forfeit your own perception and conscience to an ideology, you are literally giving up your nervous system to a corporate or political entity.
Creepy.
You allow an external, abstract system to operate your mouth and your actions. You lose your sovereign individuality and become a meat puppet for a system that does not actually care about you.
So how did she handle it? She didn't just flip the table and quit in a huff, which is what I might have been tempted to do.
No, she didn't.
Instead, she stood up, faced her very real fear of reprisal, studied the actual psychological and sociological literature the corporation was misusing, and ended up becoming a recognized speaker at corporate conventions, actively debunking these pseudoscientific theories.
Her success came from pragmatism. The text is very clear that you cannot just scream no from a position of absolute weakness.
Because that's just martyrdom.
And it usually fails. The practical advice for rebellion is to quietly but fiercely fortify your position. You need to update your CV, prepare for a lateral move to a different department or company, and make yourself so intensely competent that you can survive the financial fallout of your rebellion.
The text uses a pretty brutal analogy for this process. It says, if you must cut off a cat's tail, do not do it half an inch at a time.
Yeah, that's vivid.
It is going to hurt immensely to stand up to an HR department or to leave a secure, well-paying job. but dragging out the slow, agonizing soul death of a miserable, compromised career is mathematically worse.
Without a doubt.
But I have to ask, how does someone actually find the internal fortitude to abandon a safe, group-approved ideological script when their mortgage is on the line?
What's fascinating here is how the author dissects the appeal of ideology itself. He calls ideology a low-resolution story.
What does that mean exactly?
Think of a low-resolution story like trying to navigate the complexities of New York City using a map drawn in crayon by a 5-year-old.
Oh, I like that.
It's incredibly easy to read. There's a big blue line for water and a gray block for buildings, but if you try to use it, you're going to walk straight into a brick wall.
Right.
Ideology strips away all the complex, messy details of reality. Blaming highly complex, multi-layered societal or workplace problems on a single variable like class or power dynamics or gender is essentially the lazy person's substitute for true cognitive accomplishment.
Because it's just too simple.
It provides the user with unearned moral superiority without requiring them to do any actual difficult work. True personal development demands that we abandon these single axiom crayon map ideologies.
So how do you find the courage?
You find the courage to walk away by taking individual responsibility first. Clean up your own life, master your own specific skills, and rely on your own calibrated conscience rather than the warm, mindless safety of the groupthink crowd.
Man, it is a heavy mandate. If fighting macro-level corporate ideologies or surviving medical comas feels entirely overwhelming, which, let's be honest, it does on most Tuesdays, the author actually pivots to offer a surprisingly micro-level, accessible starting point for personal development.
Yes, Rule 8.
Which brings us to Rule 8. Try to make one room in your home as beautiful as possible.
It's a striking, almost jarring pivot in the text. You go from the grand mythological struggle against tyranny and chaos right down to selecting the paint color for your living room baseboards.
And what makes this section so relatable is that he admits his own blatant hypocrisy right out of the gate.
Oh, the internet meme, right?
Yeah. We've all been on a Zoom call where we had to hurriedly blur our background because there's a mountain of laundry or chaotic clutter behind us. Well, there was an internet meme going around a few years ago showing a video of the author in his home office, and the background was a complete disaster area. Papers everywhere, total disarray.
And he addresses that directly.
He does. He explains that between the severe health crises, the relentless book tours, and the sudden fame, the chaos of his life simply overwhelmed his immediate physical environment. But rather than excusing it, he maintains he still has a deep moral obligation to fix it.
And when he does attempt to bring beauty into a space, he goes all in with obsessive detail.
Totally obsessive.
He describes his own tiny 12 by 12-foot living room being packed wall to wall with 25 original paintings. He talks about painting the inside of his house with 36 different highly specific colors, all meticulously pulled from a palette based on a 1950s Chicago railway painting.
I absolutely love the story he tells about his university office, though.
Yeah.
We all know that exact space. He describes it as a fluorescent-lit hellhole of institutional bureaucracy.
Oh, yeah, draped acoustic ceilings, cinder block walls, soul-sucking lighting.
Exactly. And he was expressly forbidden by the university from making any major architectural changes. So he and an artist friend secretly went in over a series of weekends.
A covert remodeling operation.
Literally. They engineered a way to hang $75 cherry veneer plywood sheets from temporary hooks on the cinder blocks and install a dropped copper ceiling just to hide the hideous, porous acoustic tiles.
He goes to those lengths because he argues that art and beauty are not mere decoration. They aren't just there to match the fabric of your sofa or impress guests.
What are they then?
A real piece of art, or a genuinely beautiful room, acts as a window into the transcendent.
But let me play devil's advocate here,
Okay.
because this is where the philosophy meets the pavement. We all have that one dreaded drop ceiling space we have to work in, or a cluttered apartment we can barely afford.
True.
The author says beauty is like a life preserver for a man overboard. But isn't buying a painting or spending a weekend putting up cherry wood just a superficial luxury when you're drowning in real-life practical problems?
It absolutely seems like a frivolous luxury until you understand the mechanics of what happens to human perception as we age.
Okay, tell me more.
As adults, we trade the miraculous, awe-inspiring vision of childhood for functional, pragmatic efficiency. Think of a stressed parent impatiently rushing a toddler through a park walk because they have things to do and schedules to meet, while the toddler is completely mesmerized by the complex geometry of a single leaf or a bug on the sidewalk.
Yeah, kids see everything.
Exactly. As we get older, we become functionally blind to the richness of the world. We only see objects as tools to get to the next objective.
That's a little sad.
It is. Inviting true beauty into one room, making a space intentionally unapologetically beautiful, acts as a pattern interrupt for the brain. It breaks that bleak utilitarian necessity. It forces you to stop and observe.
So it snaps you out of that zombie mode.
Exactly. It reconnects us to a sense of awe, to the divine and to the immortal. And psychologically speaking, that connection to something greater than our immediate stress provides the actual sustaining strength needed to endure the suffering and tragedy we discussed at the very beginning of this deep dive.
So what does this all mean? We have covered some incredibly intense ground today, from Russian ICUs to HR departments to living room paint. But the through line is incredibly clear.
It really is.
Navigating a meaningful life requires a deep structural respect for the order that keeps us safe and sane. But simultaneously, we must find the courage to bravely face the chaotic unknown, because that is the only place where new potential and growth live.
Precisely.
We have to fiercely refuse to betray our own conscience at work, even if it means doing the hard work to prepare to walk away. And, perhaps most surprisingly, we need to actively invite true beauty into our immediate physical spaces to fortify our spirits for the battles ahead.
This raises an important question, perfectly captured in the final rule of the book, Rule 12. Be grateful in spite of your suffering.
That's a tough one.
It is. The author makes it very clear, especially given his own horrific medical journey, that gratitude is not some passive, naive, toxic positivity feeling. When you are fully, painfully aware of the random cruelty and tragedy of the world, choosing gratitude is a courageous, voluntary act of defiance.
A defiance against the darkness.
Exactly. It is a conscious decision to let your actions support and strengthen being itself, rather than giving in to the very justifiable temptations of resentment, deceit, and arrogance.
Which brings it all right back to you, listening to us right now.
Mm-hmm.
Look around the room you were sitting in or driving in at this exact moment. Take a really good, hard look at your immediate environment.
Give it a real look.
Is this space a reflection of the intentional order you are actively trying to build for your life? Or is it a reflection of the chaos you are currently ignoring because you are too tired to face it? If you were to bring just one piece of true, transcendent beauty into your immediate line of sight today, how might that one small, rebellious act change the way you face tomorrow's dragons?